Listen to what happened. A 15-year-old boy took a selfie, not with a friend or a beautiful view, but with the severed head of his mother's temporary husband. Imagine, he had a terrifying smile on his face when he sent this picture to his mother. What could have been in this child's heart to take such a brutal revenge? They say the mother was forced to do very bad things. That's why this boy was enraged. This story is about a terrifying revenge. A gruesome crime that a simple selfie exposed everything. Now sit back and listen as I tell you the rest of this story. A story that will make your hair stand on end. Imagine a selfie, an ordinary photo, but with a severed head and a devilish smile on the boy's face. This shows the deep grudge the boy held against that man. The boy who did this was only 15 years old, but he had a very bitter past and a difficult childhood, which led him to plan this murder for a long time. To tell you about this crime, we need to go back to the 26th of Mordad, 1400. Somewhere in the Golshar neighborhood of Mashhad, a fire was reported. Golshar in Mashhad, which is known as the second Kabul. It's a poor and suburban neighborhood where most of the residents are Afghan. The condition of the neighborhood and the rundown rental houses show how dire and disorganized the living situation is for the people there. In recent years, the Afghan population in this area has increased so much that living and residing there has become difficult, even for the locals of Mashhad, and whoever could has somehow moved out. The few locals of Mashhad who stayed or have intermarried with the Afghans and have become part of them. The fire on the 26th of August occurred in the house of one of these Iranians who had intermarried with the Afghans. The flames from an old and shabby house reached up to the sky, and no one dared to get close. The only thing the neighbors did was to check if anyone was inside the house. A man around 50 years old lived in that house with his elderly mother. But since no sound was coming from inside, the neighbors were sure that no one was home. It didn't take long for the fire trucks to arrive, and they extinguished the fire before it spread to the neighboring houses and entered the house. The fire chief, who was from? He was one of those seasoned veterans. As soon as he entered the house, he suspected that the fire was intentional. That's why he sent his colleagues to investigate further and find out what was going on. The investigation didn't take long, and 2 mutilated and half-burned bodies were found in the bathroom of the house. This way, it became clear that the fire had started exactly from that spot. It was no longer a simple accident, and all the evidence Maus indicated that a premeditated crime had occurred. The condition of the house also showed that the killer had entered without any resistance. He killed the 50-year-old man and his mother and then set the house on fire to leave no trace of himself. It was completely natural and normal for a stranger to easily enter this house, because the victim, besides being somewhat of a criminal himself, was also dealing drugs. The basement of that 40 square meter house was also somewhat of a hangout for local addicts. After the news of the murder of 2 Iranians in the Afghan neighborhood spread, Colonel Najafi, the head of the homicide division of the Khorasan Razavi Police Intelligence, personally went to the crime scene and took charge of the case. This was a controversial and high-profile case that could easily ignite a conflict between Iranians and Afghans and turn into an uncontrollable situation. In that old and run-down neighborhood, there were no surveillance cameras to check the comings and goings before the fire. But instead, there were plenty of idle people wandering around the neighborhood from whom you could get accurate information. For this reason, the neighbors were investigated, but no one had seen any suspicious activity near the house on that day. The investigation was proceeding in a very vague and blind manner, when suddenly the first spark in this criminal case was ignited by the local grocer. The local grocer, in the midst of his conversation, mentioned the comings and goings of a person, which provided the first clue to the detectives. He, being one of the old-timers in the neighborhood and well acquainted with all the residents, said that the deceased stepson, who had left the area with his mother 2 years ago, had come to his shop and bought some groceries. The boy the local grocer was talking about was an Afghan boy who had lived with his mother in the deceased's house for several years. Apparently his mother was in a temporary marriage with the deceased, but there were many rumors about her, and eventually they left and went to Afghanistan. The grocer wanted to say something else, but he was very hesitant. I wish it was difficult and he would take it from his tongue. But when the case investigator insisted that he shouldn't leave anything unsaid, he said, "Sir, I don't want to speak ill of anyone. If there was something, it's their own fault. And if there wasn't, may God forgive me. In the neighborhood, there was a rumor that the man was arranging clients for his Afghan wife and doing business with her. Because of this issue, the woman left with her child and went to Afghanistan. The fact that a boy with this background returns to the neighborhood and the house where he has bitter and terrifying memories after a year seemed very suspicious. For this reason, this 15-year-old boy was pursued as the only lead and even the main suspect in the case. 9 days after the crime, when he was trying to leave Iran for Afghanistan, he was arrested on charges of involvement in the murder. This 15-year-old suspect gave himself away during the initial conversations. Long before being asked any questions about the victims, he claimed that since coming to Iran 2 weeks ago, he had only been in Tehran looking for work. He said that since he hadn't found a proper job, he was forced to return to Afghanistan. This was while the interrogator hadn't mentioned anything about his presence in Mashhad, yet he insisted on saying he hadn't been in Mashhad. This was despite the fact that the local grocer had seen him on the day of the crime. Considering that all the evidence and documents were against him, his mobile phone was confiscated by order of the judicial authority to possibly find a trace or clue by examining his calls and messages. And the clue the police were looking for came to them much sooner than they had expected. The 15-year-old suspect had sent a photo to his mother on the exact day of the crime. A selfie of himself with the severed head of his mother's ex-husband. There was nothing left to hide, and he was forced to recount and confess the details of the incident. In the interrogations, he said that his father was a construction worker who fell from scaffolding and died. Since he didn't have a work permit, their employer gave them nothing. His mother, out of poverty and desperation to feed him and his sister, became the temporary wife of that scoundrel. But he harassed her so much that his mother took them and ran away. Later he found out that the scoundrel was renting his mother to those he used drugs with, and that's why she ran away. When he realized what the real situation was, nothing else mattered to him except to kill him. That's why he came to Iran under the pretext that he wanted to get his birth certificate. He went to that man to get the letter and asked for his help. He bought some sweets and juice from outside and laced them with a sedative. When he and his mother ate those sweets, they passed out, and he stabbed both of them with a knife and sent that selfie to his mother, indicating that he had taken his revenge. Then he set the house on fire so that they would think everything was accidental and it wouldn't be revealed. After these shocking confessions, the crime scene was reconstructed. Since the killer was underage, after completing his case file, he was sent to a juvenile correctional facility until the court hearing. But the victim's next of kin were the younger brother of the deceased and the son of the murdered elderly woman who had separated his life from them years ago and was living in Sari. After he learned about the murder of his brother and mother, he announced that he was willing to forgive and forego retribution in exchange for receiving blood money. The latest news about this case is that a wealthy Afghan resident in Mashhad has agreed to pay the blood money for the victims so that the 15-year-old murderer can be released and return to his mother in Afghanistan. Thank you for staying with us until now. Please be sure to write your comments below this video for us. If you haven't subscribed to our channel yet, please support us by subscribing. You can help us create videos by sending us events that have happened to you or those around you. Goodbye until we review a new case.